Welcome to the 27th October Walton County Shite Show update. If you hadn't seen my show about the land debacle, watch that. And if they do anything other than what I talked about, that was a dirty deal, because that law was meant there to make sure we could buy unbuildable land, or land that was critical at the fair market value. So if you haven't seen my 26th October show, you better go watch that. But this show tonight is about a couple of things, but first and foremost, this is about the chronic problem of 25 years of selective enforcement by Walton County government. And what that means by that, I'm gonna give you a couple of examples tonight and get into that. But it means that the rules are not the same for everybody. And isn't that what discrimination is? Isn't that what everybody in America is fighting? Even when it's not happening, they're saying it is. Well, in Walton County, it happens. And I'm going to give you an example. The BCC the other day, besides the $18 million debacle, that none of the commissioners even want to breathe the word eminent domain for fear of political repercussions and vote repercussions, and people coming after them of their friends, not allowing them to make a fortune off the public when really the public doesn't have to pay that kind of money for it. But no, the BCC didn't say anything about those other options. And like I said, the property needed to be bought. But before that ever came up, it was really disingenuous. Everybody got up there and talked about how critical the health of this lake was, and they were willing to spend $18 million because this thing was so critical of the taxpayers' funds. And before that subject came up, we had the county grant writer get up there and go over the county's priorities, and at least 3 or 4 of them, you can go listen to that show, had to do with priorities of telling the federal government what they wanted to do to save the Choctawhatchee Bay. And I'll use that as my lead in for selective enforcement. The BCC's open concern about the coastal dune lakes is well-founded because they're important, but it's disingenuous because they don't give a shit. They only care because it's popular. They care because it serves their purpose, and they care because there's an insider connected to that property, and it's got stench written all over it, even though the property is of great value, even though it's unbuildable, just to maintain the eastern lake. I mean, everybody gets that. I mean, even the commissioners get that. But it's just this selective enforcement of the rules, depending on who you are, whether the truth that you've told will affect the wrong people, and who's it related to. You know, can we cover this up? That's the Walton County policy. And the reason that all that stuff was disingenuous, because they talked about federal grants to clean up the bay. If you haven't seen my meeting with Nick and some of the others, they've admitted that a developer, Sandestin, the Sandestin DRI, it's just not in compliance, and they can't refute it, but they haven't issued a single violation on those stormwater. But here we are, willing to spend $18 million to preserve one lake, and the whole bay. It would cost absolutely nothing to issue a notice of violation. When's the last time Sandestin filed an annual report? And who on the county staff said it was correct, that the traffic was in compliance and the drainage was, who signed that? I mean, Matt Carpenter? Really? Matt. This guy's in charge of doing the right thing? That's like Mr. Smithers. Nobody believes that. Look, that thing's out of compliance, and that's what I mean by selective enforcement. That's the first example I'm going to give you because I know it the best. I've dealt with it for years, and everybody knows it. And the county, as Nick said, I stood them all up. If you hadn't seen that about 15-minute dissertation of, hey, somebody's lying, to which the chairman responded, "You ain't wrong, Alan. Well, and said your staff was lying and you wouldn't issue violations. So that's what we mean by selective enforcement. It depends on what it is and who you are. And I'll roll into my next example beside this, the 2,000 plus acres of runoff occurring centralized around the Sandestin DRI. And oh, by the way, you people up there on 30A, I understand Becknell's pre-selling those 22-story condos. Oh yeah, screw that 5 stories because he's in the DRI. He's not in compliance, but he's going. I heard he's always selling those condos, SDI. Where are all you screaming for him to follow the rules, or is he just too connected? So we'll roll into the second example, which is the horsepower pavilion. If you don't know the subject of this, this is 2 people in a family, Kate and Fred, who've moved out there and bought the old Golden Horse Ranch there and opened up a great business and support the community like no other. But the problem is they're not from here. They're not one of them 20 families that Mike Atkinson acknowledges as the sheriff. And code enforcement and a couple of locals are bound and determined to lower the boom on the horsepower pavilion because it's too successful and too popular. And some local didn't think of it first. Well, that's not how America works. And so they've applied for permits, and I have personally witnessed code enforcement showing up at the drop of a hat and parking and walking and stalking them in the middle of business. I mean, there's so many, they've shut them down completely, and I think their fines right now are like $5,000 a day. Okay, well, there's a fine going on 38 that made the paper. It's $50 a day. Who decides this crap? Where's that written down, or what the standard fines are? And how did they get to this point? Look, Kate and Fred want to get the right permit, but they're playing skip to the loo and you know, where's Waldo when it comes to just getting a permit, because there's people that want them to fail. Now, coincidentally enough, the issues that Caton have is serving outdoor food from food trucks, and they have a live band put up on top of a beautiful place out there built on some sturdy containers. And they've applied for all these permits and the proper licensing, but guess who they're in direct competition with? Mr. Chair of the County Commission, Trey Nick himself. That's right, Trey. I bet you don't like that. And sure enough, this past week, while Kate and Fred were shut down, they had a big shindig down at Nick's. And I heard they had the band up on a homemade platform. And Nick himself was out selling shots in the crowd. And I don't even think they have a liquor license. Folks, that's the hometown advantage, swinging for the fence, because there's dollars involved. And Nick had that place for years and never had the initiative to do what Kate and Fred have been doing. And they actually give back to the community by size going, hey, buddy, it's nice to see you. Want a hush puppy? They've really done a lot for kids and anybody else. That hosts some great events up there, car shows, kid days, live bands, discussing what's good for the community. And folks, we got people running in the southern border, and here we got 2 people came to the community of Freeport and invested millions and want to raise their children here. And somehow Walton County has a problem with that because they're not connected enough. Okay, so there's your second example. So Sandestin facing no fines for polluting 2,000 acres of runoff, non-compliance of traffic. God knows what it's cost the county of them lying on their annual report, because Mac Bayou has given up so much proportional fair share because of reports with lies. It's ungodly. And then you got the horsepower pavilion getting fined like $5,000 a day. They can't do anything except private events. And now we'll roll to 30A. 30A, Mr. Beatty is getting treated different because he's got a Trump sign. Trump won. Doesn't say what Trump or what he won or anything. It's just a free speech thing. But lo and behold, local spoiler and the creator of the Grim Reaper, God, That whole debacle of what Dave Roshkob has done out there with Daniel Ufelder, I can't even find words. So there's old Diamond Dave right back in the paper saying that he finds it inappropriate. Well, Dave, where's your Joe Biden sign? I bet you won't hang one on there because you don't want holes shot in your building. If you like expensive food, if you like paying for everybody coming into this country for free, if you like spending $1,000 on an emergency room visit to cover all the sorry people who won't have to pay a dime, if you like that kind of country, then you're a Biden kind of person. Dave, where's your signs? Where are you, Mr. Roshkob? How come you don't hang your own signs down? Because what would they say? FJB? I hope so. I bet you're not so proud to be a Democrat now. Oh my God, this place is falling apart, and some guy makes a statement that's protected. And this is what's going on all across the country. It's going on in our own BCC. They don't want us to know the whole truth. And pretty soon that's going to be seen. But I think Mr. Peavy's had enough, and I think he's hiring a lawyer. And I'll tell you something else. Code enforcement's about to have a code officer they fired for doing their job correctly take them to school. They're getting ready to take depositions. So things are not all glamorous and rosy in Tony Corman or the BCC land, because they're about to see some real hard questions, and they're going to roll right back to administration. And speaking of that, on Friday, there's going to be a special meeting on administration as these people jockey for the power that Larry Jones possesses and who they want to have it. Larry's going to throw the medical card, and a ensuing shit show is going to hit the fan, sculpted by this guy and trying to get Mr. Brannon back into where he's playing Pied Piper for the county. You can't make this stuff up. Tune in for that special meeting Friday of the BCC. It should be on live. Nobody really knows about it, but it's on the Walton County website. I think it's 10 a.m. in Defuniak. And the subject is administration. When are those investigations going to happen? Did Larry break policy when Stan had to resign? Did he pay him too much? Were fire extinguisher contracts given out? Is planning ever going to be audited? Will the staff ever have to report to the BCC, or is Larry allowed to cover up everything? And how the hell did we end up with Dee Dee Highnote, the former secretary, just a little bit ago, for the administrator suddenly running the whole county with no degree? These are questions Alan Osborne cannot answer. And likely the BCC won't answer them easy, but courts are coming. The days are coming. A day of reckoning is coming in the county, and they can keep covering up, but we're going to get there. You keep them straight. This is the Alan Osborne Show. See y'all next time. Hey, make a difference. Tell people what you think.